It's Thursday on Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everybody's having a great day out there today. Extremely newsy edition coming up. Velle E. Neal III joins me here in just a moment to talk Twins. He is down in Florida. He will give you an update on the ownership situation with the Minnesota Twins, so much as he can. Wolves stuff in a minute here. This was supposed to be their toughest game Wednesday night, and instead they absolutely clobbered the Nuggets by 20. They are on an absolute roll. Viking stuff at the end of the show, although most of that will just be setting up Friday's appearance from Ben Gessling, which will tie a bow around a wild week in Vikings land, and maybe more to come. First, though, what did I miss? We have breaking news this morning on Thursday. Ben Johnson, Gophers men's basketball coach, has been let go, fired, 2 years left on his contract with the Gophers men's basketball program. Email came across the desk at 1:23 a.m. this morning. Did not waste much time, Mark Coyle, the athletic director for the Gophers, in making a decision on Ben Johnson after losing to Northwestern in the first game of the Big Ten tournament on Wednesday. Not a surprise, I guess. Ultimately, I was kind of going back and forth on this, what I thought was going to happen, what I thought was going to be fair to Ben Johnson. But I went to bed last night, kind of funny. I went to bed, it was like probably 10:30. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the Wolves game. Went to bed thinking, I think he's going to get fired. You just kind of look at the body of work. I thought about how Mark Coyle evaluates these decisions. I thought about how Mark Coyle looks at not just factors on the court, but looks at things like attendance, how stuff like program malaise influence his decisions. I go back to like the Tracy Claeys decision several years ago when they brought in PJ Fleck, like someone to bring in new life to a program. And I was like, I just don't think Ben Johnson is going to be his guy long-term, even if you could make the argument that Ben Johnson deserved another year with more resources that they are expecting to have next season. He doesn't get that chance. I think ultimately the numbers, though, don't lie. Even with the almost $3 million buyout, which is a number that doesn't lie for sure and that they're going to have to pay and have to reckon with, you look at everything that he's up against, all the headwinds in terms of statistically, things like that, it just didn't add up for him to keep his job. Think about this. 22-57 in the Big Ten, 22-57 in Big Ten play, 56-71 overall in 4 seasons with the Gophers. You look at it and you say, he came into a very tough situation. He came in basically right after the COVID season, right on the heels of the COVID season, gets hired. Things are difficult there. You're trying to build up a roster. Everything changes in college basketball, college sports with name, image, likeness money, transfer portal. He's losing players left and right. You can say, hey, if Elijah Hawkins, if Farrell Payne comes back this year, they're in much better shape. They probably are. Some of that, too, though, is his ability to retain even with limited resources, things like that. So I think if you look at the body of work, the record, 22-57, that jumps out. Bottom half of the Big Ten in attendance. I think they were down again this year. Bottom half of the Big Ten in attendance. You look at that, you're looking for new life in the program. So now begins the exhaustive search. We'll talk more about this. We're going to do a part 2 of this episode later today, talking with Chip Scoggin, Star Tribune columnist. He's got a lot of strong thoughts about this. I'm going to get a part 2 of this podcast in a little while, but I wanted to get this out here right now. Mark Coyle did put out a statement as part of this. He is expected to be available to the media on Friday. So we'll hear more from him on Friday, but they put out this statement. I think the statement's kind of in 3 parts, and I think it kind of speaks to all of the issues here. He said, I met with Ben in person early this morning when the team returned to Minneapolis from the Big Ten men's basketball tournament and informed him that we were making a change in leadership. I thanked him for his dedication and for guiding the program, one he cares about deeply for the last 4 years. Ben is a terrific person, and we wish him well. All of that is true. I think Ben Johnson's a good guy. He's been on this program before. He's been, a class act. He's tried to do his best, but it just has not worked out to a level of success that anybody would have wanted. Paragraph 2, these decisions are difficult and are made out of careful consideration and evaluation. The expectation for our program is to compete for championships, and unfortunately, we have not done that in the last 4 years. Setting expectations. Now, the comeback to that, of course, is what I talked about just a minute ago. Did Mark Coyle give Ben Johnson enough resources to compete for championships? A lot of the NIL money that they've had in this program has gone to football to try to sustain that program. Now, when revenue sharing comes in next season, department officials have said that they expect to be in the upper third of revenue sharing and stuff like that in amount allotted to men's basketball. That was Chip Scoggins reporting that university officials had told him that. So where that happens, could you say Ben Johnson deserved a year with that? You can also say, hey, everybody was kind of playing by the same rules the last 4 years. Now you have an opportunity to tell a new coach, hey, we're bumping up the resources. This is going to be an attractive job, and you should be able to come in and hit the ground running. And that kind of speaks to the third part here where he says, this is an extremely desirable job in one of the best conferences and cities in the nation, and we fully expect to compete at the highest level on and off the court. We provide a world-class experience for our student athletes, have one of the best practice facilities in the nation, and play games in a historic venue. We offer everything that is needed to be successful, and we will immediately begin a nationwide search for our next basketball coach. And again, Coyle basically taking the onus off himself. He's saying, hey, we've got the resources. We've given Ben Johnson an opportunity to compete. I think all of the things he listed are true. Again, you come back, though, did he have the money to retain and recruit players in this modern era of college basketball? I don't know that he did. However, I also don't think that that was Ben Johnson's forte. He came in as a high school recruiter, as a guy who was known for recruiting in the high school game. The script was flipped almost immediately when he got here. High school recruiting became less and less important. You had the very best players were going to be one and done, and then a lot of the players you were bringing in were kind of transfers from lower level programs or transfers across the way who were making less money on NIL deals elsewhere and came into these other programs after they had good seasons. That was not the kind of recruiter he was, and he did not have the budget to become that kind of recruiter. So is this fair? Ultimately, you can question that. Is this the right decision? I think ultimately, yes. If you want to get a jump start on moving this program forward, this was the time to do it. And they made that decision. They were decisive about it, didn't waste any time. And here we go. And like I said, Chip and I will have more on that in a part 2 of Daily Delivery today, later on this afternoon, hoping to publish that maybe right around the noon hour. So check for that later today. Just so much going on right now. Vikings free agency, Wolves on a roll, Gophers making this news. When it rains, it pours. When it snows, it snows. That's what we say around here. But there is plenty of other stuff. Like I said, Wolves would have been newsy, would have probably been in the one spot today if not for the Ben Johnson news. They beat Denver 115-95. And again, this was supposed to be like the tough game in the midst of all the easier games on their schedule. Instead, they absolutely pummeled Denver by 20, kind of a start-to-finish, coast-to-coast win for them, where they were in control for almost all of it. Julius Randle continues to cook. He had 25 points in this game. He was a plus 17, 9 of 12, extremely efficient from the field. Ant had 29 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. Like, everybody just kind of firing on all cylinders. Jaden McDaniels, 16 points, 8 rebounds. Like, they're just getting balance all over the place. It was more of a 9-man rotation in this game, with Jalen Clark being that 9th, and you had a bunch of guys get in for the final 5 minutes, kind of garbage time. But nobody had to play huge minutes. It's just everybody kind of doing their jobs. The defense was great. The offense continues to look good. They are 38-29 now, and certainly playing their best basketball. And I had a letter I want to get to quickly here about Anthony Edwards. Let's grab it here quick. Jerry Gale, I listen to your podcast every day. This is my first email to you. It won't be the last. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday evening, about 1 hour from Wolves versus Nuggets. Here's my talker for you tomorrow. Let's assume Ant scores 30-plus and the Wolves win. Should Ant replace Luka on the first team All-NBA to join SGA, Joker, Jason Tatum, and Giannis/Steph? It's a fair question. I don't know where Ant ranks among all those players this season. For a while, I didn't think Ant was having a great year. I don't know if he's one of the 5 best players in the NBA yet. However, there's still 15 games left in this regular season. The Wolves are ascending right now. He is showing that he can lead this team, that it's becoming his team. I think he was struggling with some of that earlier this season when he didn't quite know how to kind of play without Karl Anthony Towns. I think he's figuring that out now. I think that has become something that he's gotten better at as the year has gone on. He certainly has a very good supporting cast around him, things like that. That is becoming more apparent as time has gone on. I don't know if he's a first-team All-NBA player yet. That's a question maybe for another day, for the end of the season. What's not in doubt is he's playing well right now. He's a little streaky, but he's playing very well right now. Now they've got 5 straight home games, and all of them winnable for sure. It starts tomorrow against Orlando. Then you got Utah, Indiana, and then the Pelicans twice. Now, Indiana's a good team. Orlando's still in contention for a play-in spot in the East, so they're not terrible. But, Utah, not great this season. The Pelicans, those are some of the worst teams in the entire NBA, talking about right there. So, Wolves, if they can stay the course, keep winning these games they're supposed to win, keep on their business, they can run this thing, get a 9 out of 10, something like that. Whatever it is, this streak keeps stacking wins in the crowded West. I've just been so impressed with them lately. I think they are peaking at the right time. Their depth is in a good place. Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo have come back from injury in great form. Rudy Gobert looks good now that he's back from his back spasms. They look rested and ready. They look kind of like a veteran team. Not that they were coasting all year, but they look more like a veteran team. Last year, I think they had something to prove in the regular season. This year, they've been a little bit more calculated, whether it's by necessity or by design. They're kind of saving it up maybe for the playoffs this season. We'll see. Still a ways to go to get to the finish line. Still just got to get into the playoffs, because if they don't get up to that top 6, they're going to have to win a play-in game. But I think they're capable right now of being a threat in the playoffs, and they keep rolling on Wednesday night.
Open a smart checking account at Royal Credit Union to get no monthly fees, no minimum balance, and a $250 bonus. See details at rcu.org/checking bonus. No minimum balance required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 5/31/25. Insured by NCUA.
Excited to talk to Velle E. Neal III today, Star Tribune columnist. Velle, usually in this space we do our daily delivery debate segment. We're going to suspend that for a week, though, because you're down in Fort Myers still for Twin spring training. We did kind of a debate-themed Twin segment last week, but I thought this would just be a time to kind of catch up on everything you're learning in Florida. First and foremost, Velle, is probably where might we be at with the ownership stuff? Because here, opening day is just a couple weeks away, and if that was ever the hope, the deadline for having a buyer identified, I don't know if we're going to get there.
I don't think so either. I'm going to be talking to someone about that. This is Wednesday. I think we're taping that. I'll be talking with someone about that sooner than later. But I think the timetable has to be pushed back. And it's, the things I've heard is that, there are people who are interested, but, the role of this Allen and Company investment equity firm, is to accept bids, but sometimes it's also to reach out to prospective owners and see if they can matchmake and maybe put groups together in order to purchase a team, of course, at the price the Twins want. So I think some of that's going on behind the scenes right now. It's not what the Twins fans want to hear, because when the first reports came out, let me have a buyer by opening day, everybody got excited.
Right.
These things take a while. And, I remember reading very little about the period that the Angels and the Nationals were for sale before they were taken off the market. And we've had a couple updates with the Twins, which is a little more I won't say transparency, but we've got a little more reporting on the Twin situation than no situation. So we're kind of, been taken along for the journey here to finding a new owner, and people probably want it done sooner than later. I apologize. I don't think you're going to get what they want. They have to be a little more patient here. I would say the safe thing to assume would be to possibly wait until the end of the calendar year before you have some resolution on who the next owners of the franchise will be. So you're going to have to be patient here. We're not even sure that Ishbia was seriously the best candidate. He may have been a candidate. It might not have been the best candidate. And my hypothesis, because I have nothing to back this up, also, too, is that why buy the Twins when you can buy into the White Sox? You're already established in Chicago. You already own a small percentage of the team. Why don't you just start buying out limited partners? And sure enough, that's what's happening right now with the Ishbia, is buying out limited partners and putting themselves in a position to one day own the White Sox. So that development, once you heard that Ishbia is on part of the White Sox, I was like, okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead. So, sorry, folks, I can't give you any indication that Bill Gates or Warren Buffett have stepped up the Twins. You're going to have to be a little more patient.
Why, there's many reasons why things can take a while, and this is a big transaction, it's over $1 billion, do you get the sense that the asking price is maybe a difficult hurdle? If it's $1.5 billion, somewhere in there, is it where baseball is economically, where we're looking at some uncertainty with the TV future, both locally and nationally? We got potential for some collective bargaining stuff after the 2026 season. Like, is it a hard time to sell a team just because of the headwinds in baseball in general?
I've asked that question to people before, and I keep hearing no, because one, there's plenty of billionaires in the country right now, and two,
that's true.
These teams don't come for sale very often, so everybody wants to jump at them. I'm skeptical of that. I gotta think that the lack of TV clarity is a revenue stream that they need to get a handle on before they move over. They also have to be worried about the possible work stoppage following the end of the CBA in December of 2026. I think those two things have to be taken seriously if you want to take over a major acquisition like a sports franchise under those conditions. So I just got to imagine it's going to factor. I can't see how it can't, So we'll see. I still keep getting indications there's interest in the franchise. So we'll see how that plays out.
What else have you been learning down there about the actual team that they're going to put on the field here in a couple weeks for these real games? What do you like? What are concerns? What are maybe some roster moves that are yet to come?
Yeah, I'm still thinking this team's going to be a good offensive team, and part of it's not just because I think Correa, Buxton, and Royce Lewis are going to be healthier, but I just think you look at the Wallners, the Larnachs, and the Mirandas, who have gotten a little more experience now. Miranda's pushing 1,000 at bats in his major league career, so he's at a point where he should be able to take off. Larnach held his own. He ended up getting extensive playing time last year because no one else could go out there, and he ended up handling himself fairly well. Matt Wallner had a 149 OPS plus, which meant that he was nearly 50% better than the average offensive player in baseball. I think those are positives there. You get worried about the big three, but I think that other three could take a step forward and make this thing even better. In addition to improved health to the other three we keep mentioning, I just think they're going to score runs. I don't think it's going to be a problem. And plus, everything that went wrong last year, they still finished 10th in league in score.
Yeah, that is amazing to think about. 10th in baseball, not just the American League, 10th in baseball, yeah.
Right. The collapse in September, they still were 10th. So I like the offense. I like the pitch staff from head to toe. A little bit concerned about the defense because the outfield's not going to have the range it used to have. Now, they got a solid arm in Larnach and a wonderful arm in Wallner and a strong arm in Brian Buxton. That helps control the running game. But I think they're going to suffer a little bit of range and just overall defensive ability. I think that's one reason why the Twins brought in Harrison Bader as a free agent. One, he's right-handed, so he can offset the lefties in the lineup when they need to. So you'll see him start against some left-handers, and you'll see him as a late inning defensive replacement. Also, you're losing a Gold Glove first baseman in Carlos Santana. And as soon as the ball skips away from Ty France at first, you're going to be like, oh, God, here we are. France is defended as the defensive metrics, saying that he's much better than the metrics suggest. I'm saying prove it then. I was talking to Joe Mauer this week, and Joe's been working with France at first base, and they've been hitting him balls that he has to try to scoop out of the dirt, and that he thinks he's done a pretty good job doing that. So that's a big key there. Positioning is another factor, too, in terms of playing first base. That brings us to Eddie Julian, whose defensive shortcomings can continue to shine in spring training. There was a game a few days ago, I want to say in Sarasota against Baltimore. He committed 2 errors, and Price would have been charged at third. He mishandled a ground ball. He tried to start a double play, but did not give himself a throwing lane the second and hit the runner in the back of the head with the throw. And then there was a play where he could have been called for a third error on the throw from Brooks Lee that hit Julian's glove and fell to the ground, but they decided to give Lee the throwing error, or Julian would have had 3 errors in that game.
Oof. Okay.
There, and I know he's here because of his bat. You're willing to accept some defensive shortcomings in return for offense, although you don't want it to become a zero-sum scenario. But Julian still has to work on some things at the plate in terms of when to be aggressive, when not to be. I admire his patience, but there's too many calls strike threes. Yeah. And I just think he's destined to start the season at AAA, trying to kind of I don't want to say reinvent himself, but he's going to renovate himself a little bit as a player. Especially when you have someone like Brooks Lee, who's a good defensive player with a wonderful arm, and my man Willie Castro's got to play. Willie's got to play. Yep. He's got to be in the field. Second base is the place where he's the most steady at, and I think he wore down last year having to play shortstop while replacing the injured Carlos Correa. I don't think that's going to be an issue this year. So I just think that leaves his Phil Miller in the background.
Yep, photo bomb from Phil. Hey, Phil.
I think that leaves Eddie on the out here.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking at. So
that'd have been like unthinkable, like end of 2023. It looked like this guy was going to be one of their offensive mainstays. He was, he had a great first season, and then last year we know about the struggle, and then now it seems like it's just kind of more of the same of that, right?
I know. You thought he was going to be like the stalwart there. You thought he was going to follow the Corey Koski development plan. That he was going to invest his entire offseason and take as many ground balls as he could to make himself a solid defensive player, which Koski did with Ron Gardenhire, which has been reported often. That has not happened, and we see the results of that. And and Julian may have to learn a hard lesson here by starting the season in the minors.
Wallner is interesting to me because you're right. He had a very good year last season. When he gets a hold of it, it stays hit, as they say. He's got good loft on his swing, hits a lot of home runs. They're talking about maybe having him be the leadoff guy, which I think is interesting. What is his upside more than we realize? Has he got, I would say, star potential is maybe a bit of a reach, but has he got the potential to be more than just a nice bat? Can he emerge into kind of, young core conversation more than just, hey, Matt Wallner's a nice player?
Well, Rocco Baldelli has channeled his inner Sparky Anderson. Sparky had been known to overhype players in the past. He thought Chris
Lavolo. Chris Pitaro, that's what it was. Chris Pitaro, yes.
I was going to be like this Hall of Fame player.
Right.
Rocco's been telling people that he thinks Matt Wallner is one of the better offensive players in the game for his ability to, the extra velocity off batted balls, discipline in his power, puts him in that category. I'm like, he has not gotten there yet. He has to put some skins on the wall before I can buy into that. I do like the potential. Okay. I see a 40 home run bat there. But as already one of the top 10 guys or 5 guys, as apparently he told one person, in terms of offense in the league, I'm not
in the league. Yeah. In the league,
yeah. He told
let's just tap the brakes on that a little bit. I'll tap the brakes on that.
Ready to go there, but he's batting 135, but he leads in home runs and he leads in strikeouts. I think he leads in RBI. That may be Ty France. I can't remember, but. He's got 4 hits. He's got 5 hits. They include a double and 3 homers. So when he hits the ball's going to stay hit, man. So I'm looking forward to that. I think we just have to get used to seeing him doing it from the leadoff spot.
Pitching wise, it seems like there hasn't been a whole lot of tumult in kind of where they started camp to where they are now. If you had to guess, as long as everybody's healthy, what is the starting rotation at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, for now, I'm going to put Paddock in there because I think they're going to put Paddock out there to see what they have in him. If they need to make an adjustment after 2 months, and they'll do it. Plus, there's nothing wrong with your prospects getting some seasoning in the minors. So he'll be in the back end of the rotation with Simeon Woods Richardson, who's pitched pretty well this spring.
Okay.
It's interesting watching him throw because a year ago I was skeptical because I didn't think he had stuff to get hitters out, but he figures out a way. He misses enough of the bat not to get hit hard. He doesn't get predictable. He throws his pitches all 4 quadrants. He hangs in there. He's a thinker. So good for Simeon. I think that's good enough to be 4th. But, it's going to be fueled by the big 3, and that's Lopez, Joe Ryan, and Bailey Over. And we all know that those guys, when they're going good, they're among the better pitchers in the league, definitely. Joe Ryan looks like he's come back fairly well from his injury last year. Ober looks great. And Pablo's last outing, he wanted to get his work in. He pounded the strike zone. He pounded the strike zone too much, and some balls got struck. I recorded the Philadelphia's first 4 hits were all 2-strike singles to opposite field. So, there you have it. He said he wanted to get his work in, and he did. So I'm not worried about Pablo. I think when it's time for the lights to get bright, that he's going to be out there. I also predict that we may not see Pablo in a minor league game the rest of the spring. Okay. Now the minor league spring training games start today. I think you're going to see some of the starters going out in the backfield and getting their work in that way instead of being on the major league field and giving away their stuff. Although Scout could easily walk to the backfield, but there's always that caveat of, well, he's facing minor leaguers. How much stock can you put into this? So I just don't think you're going to see Pablo or maybe a couple other guys pitching spring games. I think they'll be on the backfield pitching in minor league games just to get the arm work in to be built up to start the regular season.
I've shared that skepticism of Woods Richardson, and then he just kept producing last year until he kind of hit a wall with innings. He just kind of had been extended further than he had been. But again, I go into this year skeptical again, even though he showed us plenty last year with room for growth. What is it about him? Is it just that he's not overpowering? Why is there still the kind of lingering skepticism that he can do this again or do it for a career?
I think the big thing for him last year is that he made that adjustment in his delivery, a little bit of a lower arm slide, and his fastball jumped from 90-91 to about 93, once in a while, 94. And all his pitches went up in terms of velocity across the board. So he was throwing a little bit harder, and that served him well because I think throwing 90-91 is not going to get it done in Major League Baseball. This is a sport in which the average fastball is now about 94 miles an hour.
It's amazing. So, that used to be a big fastball back in my day.
I know. So Simeon's slightly below that in that regard, but he's got moxie, and apparently he's a good pitcher, man. So I enjoyed talking with him yesterday when we talked about some of the African American pitchers who have got 120 games in baseball.
Yep.
Satchel Paige and some other guys. He respects the history in that regard. I got to give him credit for proving me wrong, thinking that he will not be able to get major league hitters out consistently, but he's got something there. And it may be in here, as much as it is in his arm, which is kudos to him. But, I think he's a solid number 4 right now, behind that solid 3 of Pablo, Ryan, and Ober.
If one of those guys falters or gets injured, do we imagine Festa is next man up, or is it Zebby, or what order do we have those guys in right now?
I would think Vesta. I'm rooting for Zebby. And the one thing I've discovered down here and talked to a couple people was that I don't know if this is a new wave, but the Twins have a few pitchers like this. You got guys like throwing 5 different pitches now. They keep batting pitches. I think Zebby throws 6 different pitches, I think Sonny Gray a couple years ago was throwing 7, which is ridiculous. But
that's got to be hard for a pitcher, isn't it? You got to like keep track of all these different grips. Your body adjusts to them differently. I don't know. That feels like that'd be a challenge.
There's also the belief, though, if you have good control in general, you can work on those pitches and perfect them, and use them as weapons. And Zebby entered the organization not walking anybody, and so. He's been able to develop an arsenal there. I was talking to Pete Mackey and the pitcher coach and Ryan Jeffers about this, and they're like, their goal is to keep pitch usage below 30% and above 12% with as many pitches as possible. So the hitter cannot look at tendencies and say, well, I'm definitely getting a slider here. When he may be throwing a slider 23%, and he's got another pitch may be throwing 22%. Another
that's a good point.
So the more pitches a hitter has to worry about, they believe that's the advantage that the pitcher has. So I'm a monitor this now, and this is a hypothesis stage right now, just to see if we're seeing a proliferation of pitchers adding pitches so they can have more weapons to keep hitters confused.
I think that's a good point, because as we get the proliferation of knowing exactly what pitches guys have thrown, if you do have a tendency, guys are going to start guessing and they're going to tee off on you, even if it's a good pitch. If they know what's coming, a good major league hitter can hit a good pitch, at least more often, if they have a pretty good guess of what's coming. So you're right. If Zebby's got 3 different pitches that he might throw more than 25% of the time in a certain situation, you can't guess. You got to go up there with a plan, or if you do guess, you're probably going to be wrong most of the time.
And here's the thing, too. Some hitters look for location more so than type of pitch in certain situations. And so if they're looking outer half, but now they're like, well, I'm looking outer half, but now I have to be prepared for 4 different pitches. Once again, that advantage slides over to the pitcher. This is the reaction to the launch angle generation and all things sail or fail with these batters.
Anything else to report from down there? Anything else kind of piquing your curiosity?
Let's see. Not really. I did take a drive to Fort Myers Beach this morning to see how the recovery is looking, and it's always going to look different. I don't think it's ever going to look the way we thought it was 3-4 years ago before Hurricane Ian. The footprint's changed in town now with that margarita monstrosity in Fort Myers Beach that goes over San Carlos or Estero Boulevard. I'm sorry. Other buildings are still under construction. My favorite hangout, the Beach Well, is now started under construction. I had breakfast in a place that the owners purchased in July of 2022, 2 months before Ian hit, and they just opened last Labor Day. People are still coming back from this, man. And it just looks different because of the new construction. And I cannot underestimate the number of trees and foliage that were ripped away because of the hurricane that have left like these huge windows of sights of the Gulf of North America, I'm going to call it.
Okay.
And so you could see parts of the Gulf that you never could see before. That mixed in with construction zones, that mixed with new buildings, that mixed with dilapidated buildings that have not been knocked down yet. It still looks a little weird down there. So, but spring breakers are back. By the time I left the beach at about 10 a.m., they were starting to walk up and down the beach and be spring breakers. So that hasn't changed.
Well, at least we got that. You told me, I think people like Jeffers at this point, right? He's looking good so far in camp.
Yeah, I ran into some scouts. They thought he was taking the best at bats of anyone in camp. And I like to caution people because if you're looking at Carlos Correa, he's 1 for 20 right now, whatever it is. I would get more worried the last week of camp when the regular season's a week away and it's time to start playing some games to win as to where guys are at with their swings and with their success rates. I talked to Brock Carew about this during Twins Fest, and he said he was always pissed off because at the end of camp he was hitting terrible, but he just needed like the games to mean something and the lights to be bright, and then he would come out breaking. And some guys are like that. Once that last week of camp comes, they're like, okay, now it's time to get ready. Then you'll see a bunch of guys starting to peak at the right time. So I wouldn't get fired up about guys who are killing the ball, which Ty France is doing right now. Ty's on everything down here.
Okay.
And the guys who are struggling at Korea.
Okay. Okay, when the lights come on, we'll pay attention for that. So, all right, Lavelle, appreciate it as always. Good stuff from Florida. Enjoy the rest of your time there, and we'll catch up again next week.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to it.
Great stuff from Lavelle, as always, at home covering baseball down in Florida. He was, of course, on the Twins beat for a couple decades before becoming a Star Tribune columnist, so always love talking everything Lavelle, but especially the Twins. Let's finish quickly with the cooler. Ben Gessling and I will probably get into this more on Friday's podcast unless there is movement before then, but plenty of Vikings news this week. We'll talk about a lot of that for sure. One storyline that won't quite go away, Aaron Rodgers. You heard some reports Thursday. Hey, is he maybe potentially interested in coming to the Vikings? They seem like a dark horse. Looks like he's going to wind up with either the Steelers or the Giants, but a lot of number 2 quarterbacks going off the board, a lot of starting quarterbacks off the board. Vikings still need another quarterback to pair with J.J. McCarthy, and Rodgers hasn't made a decision. Ben has reported, he said the Vikings would at least kick the tires on Aaron Rodgers to see if that is a possibility. I still don't see it, but until something happens, until Rodgers is somewhere else, or until the Vikings sign a different quarterback to pair with McCarthy, we can't put this to bed. Are we doing this whole bleeping thing over again with Brett Favre? I'll get into this more tomorrow with Ben, assuming there's nothing more that's happened until then, but the storyline won't go away. I'm fascinated by it, but I'm also repulsed by it. I don't know. I don't know what to think right now, but until it goes away, we have to keep it at least in the backs of our minds. But Ben and I will get into all sorts of stuff that do not involve Aaron Rodgers, certainly on tomorrow's show as well. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Like I said, a few hours from now should be another bonus episode, part 2 of this one, talking to Chip Scoggins about the Ben Johnson firing. Until then, I'm Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your morning. Back at it again later.